You know that feeling, right? The lights go out, the house goes completely quiet, and suddenly, the shadows in the corner of your rooms seem to stretch just a little bit longer. It's that universal primal human fear of the dark. And let me tell you, internet horror writers know exactly how to exploit it. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to dissect the very anatomy of modern digital nightmares. Just listen to this for a second. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't go to my children? I'm going home. Hearing a ghostly weeping entity whisper that to you on a desolate, pitch-black stretch of Highway 44? Yeah, that is enough to freeze the blood right in your veins. It plunges us straight into the dark, suffocating atmosphere that these stories are built on. And it really begs the ultimate question. What happens when you ignore the signs? Today, our mission is to break down these digital campfires. We are going to dissect the recurring tropes, the terrifying entities, and the fatal mistakes that protagonists make time and time again in this chilling world of internet horror.
All right, Section 1, Internet's Scary Stories. Let's dive right into the core horror themes.
The thematic blueprint across these stories is actually remarkably consistent. We're talking isolated and trapped environments, vengeful spirits seeking some twisted form of cosmic justice, demonic possessions of totally innocent people, explicit warnings that are blatantly ignored, and most importantly, deeply tragic backstories driving the terror. Whether it's a haunted flat in the city or a possessed nun in a quiet convent, these tropes, they are the engine of our deepest fears.
Moving on to Section 2. Terrifying and cursed locations. This is all about where the terror actually strikes.
When we look at the data from our source stories, something wild stands out. Hotels easily take the top spot, followed really closely by flats, student hostels, and libraries. It's so fascinating how these seemingly safe, temporary spaces, places where we're supposed to rest, study, or just feel secure, completely dominate the terrifying landscape of these narratives.
And that brings us to this idea of a cursed space. Basically, a cursed space is a location fundamentally tainted by past tragedy. Take Hotel Soulful in Rajasthan, for example. It was built directly over a cemetery, totally ignoring the warnings of the locals. So the history quite literally bleeds into the present. The horror isn't just inside the rooms either. Remember that spine-chilling detail of the ghost children sitting right on top of the protagonist's car before they even checked in? The living are just completely trapped by the unresolved trauma of the dead.
Honestly, in these tales, the architecture itself becomes incredibly hostile. It actively isolates the characters from the outside world. I mean, we're talking about malfunctioning elevators taking terrified businessmen to non-existent fifth floors, cursed third-floor libraries that lock students in the dark, and those endless, nightmarish loops on Highway 44 where the road literally never ends. The environment is just as much the bad guy as the ghosts are.
Which brings us to Section 3, Vengeance and Demonic Forces. Let's talk about the entities of fear.
There's this really fascinating contrast we see a lot between deeply tragic human ghosts and just pure chaotic evil. On one hand, you have the vengeful mother, like the tragic ghost in Flat 18. She was a surrogate mother betrayed, murdered, and now forever seeking the child she was promised. On the other hand, you have the demonic entity. Think of the terrifying forces that possess the young nun Maria. That's an ancient, chaotic evil that physically mutates its host, breaks bones, and requires a full-blown exorcism to banish. Chand hai tu, mera suraj hai tu. You are my moon, you are my sun. It's a beautiful, wholesome lullaby, isn't it? But when you hear it drifting from the shadows of flat number 18 at midnight, sung by a dark apparition holding a doll, it twists that comfort into visceral, skin-crawling horror. That right there is a masterclass in psychological terror. It uses the exact things that should make us feel safe to make us feel hunted instead.
So how do these things actually execute this terror? What's their modus operandi? Well, the Vrinkas in the forest shapeshifts into a beautiful bride, luring campers in with the sweet smell of mendi and the illusion of a flowing river that's actually blood. In the haunted college library, the ghosts manipulate technology, spiking EMF meters and killing phone batteries dead. At Circus Circus, it's intense psychological torment with endless corridor illusions. And in Room 107, brutal physical mutation.
But here's the thing. Not all of this horror is supernatural. Look at the outbreak in the engineering hostel. A pre-placement tech serum goes horribly wrong and turns students into literal bloodthirsty zombies. The horror here is scientific, raw, and visceral. Those blood-soaked corridors of a tech hostel prove that human ambition and high-stakes pressure can be just as deadly as any ghost.
Section 4, Call of Death,
ignored warnings. Seriously, why is human curiosity so often the very first step to an absolute tragedy? There is an absolute fatal timeline that pretty much every doomed protagonist follows to a T. In the afternoon, they arrive at an isolated location. By dusk, the first supernatural sign appears, maybe flickering lights or a weird smell like rotting books or sweet perfume. By night, they explicitly ignore a direct warning from a local guard or a shopkeeper. And midnight? Well, that brings the horrific, inescapable climax.
Let's analyze their specific fatal flaws. Ashish bribed a guard to enter the abandoned Hotel Havoc out of sheer hubris and stubbornness. Kamlesh stopped his truck on Highway 44 for a strange woman out of pity. And Daniel's dad? He completely ignored a totally destroyed hotel room at Circus Circus just because he was too tired to care. Their own human nature becomes their ultimate downfall every single time.
Do not open your door after 12 a.m. I mean, it's such a simple, clear instruction, isn't it? But in the Bengal factory hotel story, our protagonist just couldn't resist opening the door to what he thought was room service delivering water. The terrifying consequence for that little mistake, coming face to face with a faceless, burned man holding a lantern.
0%. That was the phone battery level of the students trapped in that haunted third-floor library. It wasn't just bad luck either. The supernatural actively drains energy to cut off communication, because when you are alone in the dark, isolation is a ghost's absolute greatest weapon.
Finally, Section 5. Why do we want fear? Let's talk about processing horror.
Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we actively seek out stories that terrify us, make our hearts race, and keep us awake at night? Well, we actually consume these stories as a sort of mental survival guide. It's a highly structured psychological process. First, we seek the raw thrill of the unknown. Second, we confront our deepest societal anxieties in a perfectly safe, controlled environment. And third, we're subconsciously learning the rules for survival. We are teaching ourselves, at a primal level, not to open that door at midnight.
And here's the really crucial takeaway from all of this. Ghosts reflect our own societal guilt. These monsters are almost always born from human sins, betrayals, and systemic failures. Just think about it. The betrayed surrogate mother, the hidden and murdered baby at the convent, the innocent librarian framed for a crime, and the overworked engineering students driven to literal madness by corporate pressure. The real horror isn't the ghost. It's what humanity did to create them.
Ultimately, these stories are a reminder that the past never truly dies. It just waits in the shadows for someone to make a mistake. Which leaves me with one final thought for you to consider as we wrap up this explainer. Are you sure you are alone in your room right now?